What I'd like to talk about today is pros and cons of waiting so long to have surgery. As you know, in my case, I waited quite a bit longer than most people do. And the reason we have to have surgery sometimes, the doctors will push us towards it if our case just looks so bad that that's the best option. They know right away. Others, we might already have so much damage that they just kind of put you into the hospital for emergency surgery and you don't really have much of a say in it. Or in my case, I was actually controlling it pretty well at the time when they approached me about surgery. Um, and it was my choice. I could either have surgery when they first told me about it or recommended it back in 2011, or if I was willing to keep trying to fight it medication free, which I did for so long, as long as I was having annual screenings and they didn't see any hyperplasia or the early signs of colon cancer, then I was free to do that for as long as I wanted because I was managing it fairly well otherwise, and it wasn't really that urgent as long as there weren't any signs of cancer. So it ended up being about I think around 9 years, because I think the entire process of like first getting sick to having surgery and starting to recover was just about a decade. So I waited quite a while before choosing surgery, and in the it's approaching 2 years since I've had the first surgery, and depending on the day, you really think a lot about like definitely there are times where like, man, I wish I would have done this sooner, for sure. But other times where I think it's actually better to wait, not necessarily as long as I did, but but I'm happy that I wasn't rushed into it. When the doctors recommended it. So I have a few pros and cons to kind of talk about, not really in any particular order, and I'm probably just going to kind of ramble back and forth between them because a lot of times when I do think of one or the other as being good, there's usually another one that just kind of cancels it out. So obviously you can't go back in time and change it anyway, but it doesn't really matter because I feel like they all kind of outweigh each other, and you kind of end up in the same spot, one way or another. But I'm just sharing this because it might be more relevant to somebody seeing this, thinking about surgery, like something I might say might apply more to them, or whoever's watching this might say, "Oh, that sounds horrible. I don't want to end up, in that position. Maybe I should consider surgery, or the other way around. And something that I did in waiting that doesn't sound as good. It might make you want to do it sooner." So I don't know. Like I said, I'm just going to kind of ramble, but the first pro for me is I feel like it was easier to accept because it was on the table, as I said, for probably about 7 years. I had to think about it. Anytime I was having a really bad day or a tough stretch, in the back of my mind, I always kept thinking, well, I could have surgery, and this might not, I won't have to worry about this anymore. But obviously, it took me a while to go through with it. But I know for some people, it's really hard to just to even get over the sight of having a stoma early on, which for me was never really that hard. Like I didn't want to look at it the first few days in the hospital, not so much because it was going to freak me out. It was a little bit that, but it was more of just because you'd been operated on. It was still just so sensitive, and I figured it probably like just the whole area, around your stomach and around the stoma and the incision and the scar and all that probably didn't look right. So I tried to wait a few days, but I remember one of the nurses checking me, and I had to kind of pull the your blanket down, and I accidentally saw it, but didn't really freak me out. It was just kind of one of those shock things. It's kind of okay, that's what it looks like. It's not so bad. That's kind of what I imagined, but I was actually probably a little bit more shocked at at seeing the urinary catheter stuck in there. I really wish I didn't see that. That was probably worse than the stoma itself. So immediately, that kind of relaxed me, and it wasn't really that much of a shock to see. But I know for some people it can be. But having that much time to think about it, and kind of research it, you see more pictures of them. It's really not that big of a deal. It's but there weren't really any major surprises in terms of what it looked like or Again, from waiting, I was able to meet with the stoma nurse, and they plan out like where exactly it's going to go. So they'd already marked like a dot on your body. So it's like for probably about 2 weeks leading up to surgery, I had that mark there, and obviously it doesn't look the same, and it's not the actual stoma, but you can it kind of prepares you a little bit, I guess, as opposed to nothing. Um, the second pro is I would say that I definitely, in waiting, I appreciate it more. And probably the biggest thing is eating, because I think more than anything, my diet is like the biggest part of my lifestyle that I had to change when I got sick. And I was prepared as long as I was able to stay healthy, having to do that for the rest of my life, even though it was not always fun. So the thought of being able to eat freely again, that was probably the biggest factor that kept leading me back towards thinking of seriously considering surgery. And if I hadn't waited as long, I wouldn't have had so much time on restrictive diets, and not being able to eat things, and missing out on events, or I shouldn't say so much missing out. In some cases, missing out on them. Like sometimes sporting events, I would just not bother because it's hard to sneak food in. But maybe like celebrations and like family things, definitely holidays. So much of that revolves around food. They were just always kind of miserable because they weren't as fun. I couldn't eat anything, so I never really felt like I was really participating in whatever it was. But that's why I picked eating, because that's what I was looking forward to the most. And obviously, if I didn't have that much time, missing out on those things, not only would I not appreciate it more, but I never would have had the idea to do competitive eating, because it wouldn't have been relevant in that scenario. So obviously, I wouldn't have created the second Instagram. I wouldn't have met so many people, and even if I would have enjoyed my life after surgery, it's hard to imagine I'd be enjoying it like I am now, because again, there wouldn't be something that you missed so much. So that's definitely a good thing. I mean, yes, it'd be nice to go back and be able to do it sooner, but who's to say if I'd enjoy it as much? I really don't know. So that's one thing I'm definitely happy that I waited. And the last one I came up with, I feel like I probably had better doctors and better surgeon at that time. And also just kind of going back to, as I said, by then it was my choice as opposed to the doctors kind of leading me towards it. Because the first time when they approached me about it, I'd actually gone through everything except for making and scheduling an appointment and going through the surgery. I met with a surgeon, and I'm sure he probably does a good job. There's nothing about him that made you not trust him, but he just was no fun. Like, he had no personality. He's just very matter of fact, and I didn't really enjoy meeting with him. He just never really smiled. Didn't, like I said, really no personality. Just kind of told me about the procedure, and when you hear it more as just in a very matter of fact scientific way, as opposed to a surgeon that can maybe just, for lack of a better term, have a human touch on kind of describing what they're going to do and what life's going to be like afterward. It doesn't sound as bad. So I just went in there, and it was very matter of fact, and I had to put the gown on, and he just kind of looked around at my butt and kind of poked around, which I don't even understand why that was necessary just at the at that early stage. Needless to say, I was not expecting that, and it wasn't very pleasant. But again, not to say that I don't think he would have been able to do a good job, but at that time, I can almost guarantee you, just knowing my personality and knowing me, if anything didn't go like 100% right, and was not an improvement from what I was experiencing before, I probably would have been bitter. Kind of held that against them and my doctors, and just would have been generally unhappy with it. Even if the overall the process and procedure was an improvement, I'm sure I would have kind of held on to some of that negativity, and it wouldn't have been as fun. Whereas waiting, I was able to get different doctors, and I went to a different surgeon. My surgeon was great, just from right on. like I said, kind of just that human element. She was a lot more fun. I remember laughing a lot and kind of joking about things at the initial kind of consultation. But also, to be fair to that first surgeon too, by then it was my choice also. So it's like I didn't really have to be sold on the procedure as well. Like he had to sell me on it and sell me on himself as a surgeon. Whereas the second time around, I was already sold myself. So like I said, I don't want to sound just like trashing that first surgeon, but definitely happier the second time, and things came out better than I ever would have imagined. So again, in the long run, that's what's most important, and I can't complain about any of those things. And really, the only con, and a lot of these things I said that kind of intertwine too, is you feel like you kind of, well, at least for me, like anyone could say like you lost those years that you weren't that I was trying to just manage with my bad colon. Depending on your age, I mean, I would say you lost, like in my case, I lost some good years because I was like right at the end of my 20s into my 30s. And you can't go back in time and like re-experience certain things that are just they're kind of time sensitive, so to speak. And I remember my first, well, not my first doctor, but the first specialist that I saw that was linked to that first GI that I had, who I did not like at all. That could be a whole different video, but just to put it simply, I have nothing good to say about him whatsoever. But the specialist, even though we kind of butted heads about how I wanted to be treated, he's a really nice guy. I have nothing bad to say about him as a person. In fact, even just as a doctor, he used to tell me a lot. Like he'd give me all this information and recommend these medications, and this is what I should be doing. But he would always end it with, but it's your decision, it's your body. I don't want to push you to do something you don't want to do, which is nice. So he was a really nice guy, and that's what he used to say too. Is I don't want you to look back someday and think like you missed all this time, or at that time I'd already kind of been sick for about 2 years, and I remember he used to say that a lot. Like I don't want you to miss any more time, and at the time I didn't really understand it, but obviously after having surgery and feeling like you missed out on things, I can relate to it a lot more. But even so, before I had surgery, when I was just managing for those like maybe 7-ish years, I wasn't bedridden or anything. I mean, that's why I was able to wait so long, is that I could still do a lot of things. So I wouldn't say I lost those years. I just couldn't really, looking back, it's like you didn't really maybe live them to the fullest that you would expect to, or you would like to. But I think that was one of the things early on, and just in being diagnosed, and probably within those first maybe 4 months or so, of you'd start to recover, then you'd have really bad days, and just lots of the ups and downs that come with it. For me, early on, because once I had a good approach to managing it, I didn't really have a lot of like wild swings of good times and bad times. Like it was pretty stable. But early on, there were definitely some big swings, and that was one thing that I did kind of tell myself was just. When you kind of accept that you have the disease and it all kind of sinks in, and you realize like, okay, well, it's, you're not going to die. It's not that serious, but it is life changing. And I was able to kind of tell myself, well, I mean, it's always kind of human nature to compare yourself to others, whether it's like by age or by gender, or kind of where you are, in your life at the same time, that sort of thing. And like they always say, you shouldn't do that anyway, but it's only natural to some extent. But that was one thing I was able to kind of drill into myself, was just your life's going to be different from other people's. So you have a pretty serious illness, and it's definitely going to take a toll and impact your future. So you might still want to do certain things. Doesn't mean you should give up and like just use it as an excuse. Oh, well, I'm not going to be at this point. I'm not going to accomplish these things. But at the same time, I mean, if you try your best and you might come up short, or you just feel like you've taken that shot and it just doesn't work out, I wouldn't really say it's using it as an excuse. It's true sometimes. It's just there's certain things that just aren't going to work out the way you envision them, because of it now. But yeah, hopefully you find ways to adapt. And I feel like surgery, I feel like in my case, even though I waited, it turned out like, just from looking at it from before and after, it's worked out extremely well as far as functionality. Um, but I know there are other people that haven't had as successful of surgeries, or in some cases too. I know when it is like a little bit more rushed or more of an emergency thing, and they don't have time to take as many like X-rays and map out exactly what they're going to do. Sometimes it's not as successful. But I don't know anybody that I've met online, even if it hasn't worked out as well for them, and they do have some complications they deal with regularly. I don't know anybody that just flat out regrets having it done. Everybody that I know of considers it an improvement and is happy that they did it. So I would definitely fall in that category. And like I say, I go back and forth of if it was better if I waited, or if I'm happy if I waited, or if I would have done it sooner. And it really you'll just go in circles. So I don't dwell on it. I mean, I've never really dwelled on it, but it's just, again, it's natural to wonder, not just on that, but just a lot of things in life. You look back like, oh, what if I did this differently? Or, maybe just some other thing you just put off for a long time, and when you did it, it was no big deal. And you're like, oh God, I can't, like, why did I wait so long to do that? It's kind of the same way, but it just, obviously it's a big thing, because it's, you can't go back and, well, obviously depending on your condition, I mean, you could have like a reversal surgery over time as well, which, but still, I mean, just the initial procedure. I mean, once you do it, you can't go back and undo it, in that same way. So it is a big decision. It is something to think about a lot and research a lot. But if you're in that position, whether it's putting it off or you've been encouraged to do it and you're just not sure, and you stumble upon this video, just looking for information. I hope it was useful. If there's anything else you'd like to know, you can always message me. You can find me on Instagram as well. And as I said, I mean, aside from just doing all the eating videos, I just like to put my story out there, because everyone's is a little bit different, and every case is different. I mean, even though a lot of us will have like same illness or similar illness, our paths are still different too. So I think just the more information you can hear people talking about what they've done, is useful. And as I said, I'm not really, I'm kind of showing both sides, because for some people it might make more sense to wait. For others, it might be like, no, I want to get it done. I'm tired of being sick. I want to be able to do these things again. So hopefully you found that useful. And that's kind of my pro versus con experience with it. And again, if you want to reach out and ask any more specific questions, you're always free to. So I see you on the next video. Stay hungry and be healthy.